What's it like being a singer-songwriter trying to break into the Christian music industry? We're going to find out next on the Christian Arts and Entertainment Podcast.
Jesus forever, Jesus forever, Jesus forever, I will sing.
Welcome again to the Christian Arts and Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Newsom. Today I have with me worship pastor and singer-songwriter Jeff Markey. Jeff, thank you for being on the podcast today.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me, Kevin. I thought that was really kind of you. You know, I'm just trying to get myself, started and get my footing. And so it's been a blast, and I'm glad to be here.
We've known each other for what, 7 or 8 years?
Golly.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah. Good old days in seminary.
Yeah, I remember helping you move in when you and your family pulled up with a moving truck of about 2,000 square foot worth of house to shove into a 900 square foot apartment.
And I'm pretty sure in our we even moved in the apartments from the 3-bedroom to the 4-bedroom. And I'm pretty sure we still just had boxes in some places. We never even opened them up.
Remember what your biggest concern was that day?
Oh man. I think there were so many little things. Okay. So I had my position at the church, and I'm like, am I going to be paid enough money for this? And the Lord always provides, but you just don't know when you get through it. Cause you had school, we had 2 kids, we had 3 by the time we graduated. And, I think that was the whole thing. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if we could do this, but the Lord always.
No, that wasn't your biggest concern. I remember your biggest concern. You were freaking out over where your guitar was.
Ha! I forgot about that.
You couldn't find it anywhere, and you were flipping out over where that guitar was.
It was, oh yeah, oh my goodness. And I remember that truck coming, and the stress of that truck, that whole move. And I wasn't sure where he put it, and it was stuck in that. They wrapped everything up, and it was so crazy, the whole thing.
All right. So tell us about yourself and your ministry, and a little bit about being a singer-songwriter and worship pastor at the same time.
Yeah. So, when we're talking about seminary, the whole purpose why I went to seminary was to really focus on composition and songwriting. And so when I began at the seminary, I started really trying to dive in, write deeper theological songs that are going to be, meat on the bones. And I really love modern hymns. And so I started trying to do that. And so I graduated with several of those written, and I had my thesis done. We had the recital. And then I began, while I was there, I was working at FBC Covington, and I was their worship and music associate. And I loved that. I worked with Jason Brooks, and I worked with a ladies ensemble. Never knew I was going to get the opportunity to do that, and that was a blessing. And I worked with the choir when Jason was out of town, and led all 3 services. I had 1 traditional, and we had 3 contemporary. We had a Saturday night and 2 Sunday morning. And, that was a blast. But when I graduated from seminary, then I went to FBC Black Forest in Colorado Springs and was their worship pastor for 3.5 years. And they're now Cross Fellowship Church. They just changed their name recently. And we had one traditional service with the choir. And then we ended up having 2 contemporary services there just before I left. And then now I'm at Genesis Church. I'm the worship arts pastor here. I've been here for almost 2 years.
And where is that?
It's in York, Pennsylvania. So I have kind of been all around the block, from Covington, Louisiana to Colorado Springs to York here. And just want to be closer to family. I'm originally from New Jersey. I grew up in Hopatcong, and just want to be closer to my family, my wife's family, to be able to spend more time with them. And so that's been a blessing. So I've been doing that. And all along the way, I've been trying to spend more time writing. And Genesis really wanted to see the worship ministry grow in that area. And so I'm really excited to be here to be able to start doing that.
So you actually write and y'all worship at your church with original music. Is that right?
Yes, yes. We've got several of our songs, several of the church's songs, and ones that I've written on rotation. And so, that's been a blessing. And I've been able to start networking with other worship pastors. And actually, the former pastor from Genesis is now at a local church as well. And I've had him to play with me, and he's really enjoyed some of the music that we've been able to put out. And so he's willing to support me and begin singing some of my songs in their congregation. So I'm really excited about that.
Okay, so I think of Passion and Elevation Worship and groups like that sort of started doing exactly what you're doing. Have you gotten into any recording and putting anything on radios or anything like that?
So I have one single out that's Jesus Forever, and I did that in Colorado Springs. And I wanted to see how far that could go. And what was really neat about that, I've self-produced and self-released some things, but when I went through a distributor, all of a sudden new opportunities arose. And no kidding, like I was able to see that my song started getting played in radio in the Netherlands, and I was like, I never saw that something like that coming, and I was so excited to see that. And so when I got my first royalty check, it was like $12, but I'm like, wow, this is from the Netherlands. So I was just blessed by that.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So,
those royalty checks, I get every once in a while. I'll get like a $4 royalty deposit for, 2 or 3 books that were sold 6 months ago.
yeah, but it's a blessing. It's like, okay, the Lord's using this, and even if it's little, and I'm just starting out and just trying to build some sort of following or whatever like that, every little bit you say that's from the Lord. The Lord blessed me with the song, and the song is blessing others as a result. So I'm just like, I'm thankful.
So why, if it's playing on the radio and it's popular in the Netherlands, why haven't we heard it on like K-Love or here in the United States?
That's a really good question. And, the way the music industry operates, you have to be, I believe you have to be part of something that's bigger and probably more like one of the big 5, Christian labels. You have Sparrow Records, you have Elevation, you have Bethel, and they themselves are their own publishing, distributing companies, and they've figured it out. And me as a independent artist just trying to do it myself, I don't have those types of connections. I don't have those types of relationships, integrity, and the list goes on with those folks. I mean, you look at some of the great writers out there, Keith and Kristen Getty, you never hear them on the radio, but that's not their goal, Right. Their goal is to impact the church and to be a part of something greater. And so, I think you just have to find your niche and what you're really passionate about. If you want to pursue radio, that's great. You can hire a radio promoter, and you'd spend a lot of money, and you might see some benefits from that. But the industry is looking for a specific sound. Radio is looking for its own sound. And so really the biggest thing is just starting small, looking at YouTube, looking at SoundCloud, looking at, trying to develop connections with other artists' Facebook groups, and being a part of a community that's larger than yourself, that they might know things that you don't know. And so I think that's really the key for me.
Yeah, Andrew Peterson wrote a book, Adorning the Dark, and he talks a lot about community, how community nourishes art, and how art nourishes community, and how important it is to be a part of that community. Where would a new songwriter, somebody who's just getting started, and they may not know what they're doing yet, but they want to get plugged into the community, where would they go to find that community? Yeah,
and so I think really it's amazing how many groups you can find on Facebook for songwriting, Christian songwriting, hymn writing. I mean, you name it, there's groups out there, and folks will, I've just started scratching the surface on who's out there. And really, you just look for a supportive group around you that's going to enrich your process, and there's a lot. It's amazing how much people are willing to critique and work together. There's mentoring opportunities out there in these Facebook groups that you can sit down with somebody. They can share their song with you. You can talk about the good things that you like about the song, talk about the things that you were surprised by the song, maybe a pleasant surprise, maybe an unpleasant surprise, and then, vice versa. And so those things are really helpful. Just, what I would do is just type in the search bar, worship songwriting, worship leaders. And I'm a part of several worship leaders groups, which is really helpful, because when we have major changes or things that we're concerned about, we can go in those groups and get instant feedback from people who are knowledgeable and been a part of things, who can help you kind of navigate through whatever challenges you might be dealing with.
And that might be intimidating for somebody who's young, who's just starting out. Do you find these groups pretty much sort of level the playing field, and it really doesn't matter who you are, what your experience is? Everybody gets pretty much treated equally, and they're pretty accepting of newcomers?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've never seen a group, especially in this field of worship leadership, worship songwriting. I've never seen a group that looks down on somebody who's just starting out or anything like that. I've been a part of composition groups where if you don't have feedback, it's hard to grow. But everybody's tactful in their approach when either having positive or critical feedback. Everybody's really looking out for each other to try to help us grow.
Which is kind of sort of opposite of what you would expect, especially when you're in a secular market. Sometimes you sort of see this backhanded competition attitude, where if they see potential in somebody, then they don't want to step in and help them move forward because they're trying to better their own career. I've seen that in the publishing industry. You see that Yeah. So what's been the most surprising?
I'm sorry, Kevin. Yeah, it does exist. I think it within those Facebook groups, you're a lot more open with the feedback, and I think a lot more open-handed. You'll find more people within that group who are like that. And you're absolutely right, Kevin. There's parts of the industry that are really, really tough. I've had some really established relationships with some folks who are within publishing, and it gets really frustrating because I feel like, man, I'm just right on that edge. Why can't I find that niche, or why can't I find that signing and whatnot? And I've been able to navigate that feeling and that emotion to be able to channel that and say it may not be for that, but God may be doing something else here and I don't even know. And so you just have to be able to have a thick skin when you're talking about and you're talking to these folks that you're expecting response, and if they don't come, you just have to keep on moving on.
So what's been the most difficult or surprising part of being a songwriter and trying to break into the industry?
Yeah, and so that was the main thing. I started getting involved in worship conferences and songwriting retreats, really hoping for some sort of breakthrough. And those retreats themselves were breakthroughs in themselves, because I had the chance to really sit down with folks who shared their passion for the craft of songwriting as I did. But through that, when you go there, you typically will bring like a sample CD and stuff like that, and they'll do song critic sessions with these folks on these panels. And I write these songs, and I think, man, I got this song, "Oh Great God, I Believe," and that song I put out on a competition from Worship the Rock. And Worship the Rock is a subset. It's kind of a subset within the worship industry, and it's mainly for indie artists, but they also provide chord charts and things like that for resources for the bigger names out there, Elevation, Hillsong, Bethel, that type of thing. And so my song was second place in the worship songwriting category, and so I shared it in a group with some really famous songwriters. If I named them, you probably know who they were. And the critical feedback was, "This is amazing. This should be on the next next album. Nothing happened.
Hmm.
Nothing happened. But, you know, I had songwriters who I respect and admire greatly say to me, you're heading in the right direction. And that was enough for me to say, let's keep pursuing this, even if I don't get that next breakout, whatever it is, you know?
Right. That's gotta be frustrating.
It is. But, you know, you just
That's
move on.
that's part of developing that thick skin. I mean, any
Yeah.
creative art, if you're going to be a part of it, you got to have some sort of thick skin. So, with that in mind, what's the most important thing a new songwriter should know? What if you're going to give one piece of advice, you have one shot to advise a new songwriter who wants to get into the industry, what would you say to them?
I am going to share a bit of advice that I heard for myself at a songwriting retreat. It was the best advice that I've ever been given, and it's the best advice I could ever receive or give myself. If you want to write a song to appeal to the masses, you will probably appeal to no one. If you want to write a song for one person, and if that's Jesus, if that's yourself in consolation, if that's you in the quietness of your heart, you probably will be able to appeal to many. And so just pursue the things that the Lord puts on your heart, and don't look to the masses when you're writing. It's not wise, and it will rarely get you anywhere. It's not for them that you write. It's for you, and out of that wellspring, that is where you're going to have the biggest impact and the biggest effect for others.
Excellent. Well, let's switch just a little bit in these last few minutes. I'm not going to keep you a whole lot more longer, much longer, maybe about 10 more minutes. Let's talk about the industry overall. So we all know it's changed, but how can you describe for us how the Christian music industry has changed over the last 10 years?
Well, you know, I saw it happen in in the early 2000s when CDs started going out of business and people started using digital downloads. A lot of those folks in the industry were saying, the music industry is going to die. Well, it hasn't. And the new avenues that have opened up have been really successful. And more music has been purchased and downloaded and used for people than ever before. Yes, you're not buying a CD at $19.99 at your FYE anymore, right? You're buying a download for $1.29 or 99 cents. But that still has an impact for the publisher, for the writer. What that means, though, is that you're going to have to be able to write more, you're going to have to be able to produce more, and you're going to have to be able to release more. And with that comes a cost. And I think the best thing to do is to spend your time speaking to those who are going to encourage you. The best thing that you can do is work as hard as you can on your craft. I didn't know when I started songwriting that I need to learn how to mix, that I need to learn how to produce. I need to learn how to master. I didn't know that I needed to look at post. I'll send songs that I am thinking about releasing to guys that I know can trust their ear, and they can tell me, oh, the mids are too high. Oh, the highs are too loud. You need to bring those down a bit. I need people around me to be able to help me adjust my mix, and people that I know I can trust that aren't going to just try to rip the song off. And for the most part, there is no issue on that. And for the most part, I will say the industry is very open-handed when it comes to that type of thing. And so that's been really helpful. But how the industry has changed, obviously, is we've moved away from that type of thing, from CDs. We moved to MP3s. And so I didn't realize how much time I would have to spend and money I would have to spend trying to promote my music. And so with whatever release that we want to do, I know I want to spend half of my budget on the recording itself and half of my budget on the promotion of it. Obviously, it needs to be a good product, because if it's not a good product, then nobody's going to want to buy it. But if you don't promote it, nobody's going to know about it. You can have the best thing since sliced bread, and nobody's going to know about it.
Right. So what about songwriting? How's the songwriting trajectory change, and where's it going in the next 5 years?
That's a great question, and it's fascinating. I know Dr. Woodward, our seminary, the dean of the music division, he had somebody really well known come in and share about writing in the post-passion movement. And I don't know for post-passion, but if you look at what we're dealing with COVID, there's a lot of things that are not going away. People have gotten used to the convenience of online church. People have gotten used to the convenience of drive-up church. And so the large room may never come back into fashion. It might take 10 or 15 years, but the next 5 years, writing more acoustically, writing more singer-songwriter is probably a wise approach, because that's probably where most of the churches are going to be spending their bandwidth. Because to have a 12-piece band up there, it's not nearly as easily accomplished now as it used to be, unless you're in a mega church, in which case you probably can still do those things.
Right. So from my perspective, I really want to get your opinion on this. From my perspective, it seems like the Christian music industry is about 5 years behind secular music in artistic style. What do you agree? And why would that be?
Oh yeah, and I can see that. Very much so. And I think part of it is our people are used to the way things are, and it's always kind of been that way. We've always kind of flowed behind the world. I think what would help us is having folks within the industry who would push the envelope and maybe go a different direction. And there are folks out there that do that. You think of Lecrae and what he's done for our African American churches. I mean, it's opened new opportunities, new doors. And then you look at some of the things that For King and Country and Ren are doing. Yeah, and they're really pushing the envelope as well. I think, yeah, and when it depends on your production, but also, can the churches replicate it? And you have folks. What about Ed, who's been playing guitar for 40 years in the church? And you're going to ask Ed now to take all these different sample packs or different sound sourcing and say, hey, can you make these new patches and make these new sounds in your guitar? Well, Ed's been playing guitar the same way for 40 years. You're going to ask him to change. So I think it's very difficult to do that. And so you have to be really just really mindful of your setup, of your circumstance.
So part of what I'm hearing you saying, and you keep coming back to the church, is it the case that a lot of the industry is driven toward what can be reproduced in churches versus something that's just purely entertainment? Like I think back to the 90s and the glory days of DC Talk and Jesus Freak. I mean, that was fun Christian music, but it wasn't church worship music.
It was very different. Yeah.
So are we sort of trending that's where everybody wants to be, something that they can get into a church?
That is the last, because of the way the industry has changed. That's the last really great place to go. With CCLI and church licensing, every church needs to have a license in order to be able to play commercial music. And so because of that, it makes it a lot easier for our people to, for songwriters, to be able to market towards churches. And so, yeah, I see that happening very much so. But I also understand what you're saying, where if you're just looking to get away or some sort of entertainment or something like that, that's along the more of the commercial spectrum, where you're really there for entertainment. And so I could see that either way, you need a good producer who's understanding of the way the world works in order to be able to get your songs to kind of model in that vein. But it doesn't mean it can't be done. Yeah.
Right. All right, Jeff. Well, our time is running out. So do you have any last words you want to share with people listening or watching on YouTube?
Yeah, during this time, people are looking for solace. And so if you're gonna write, write to encourage and to comfort folks. Right now, I think the biggest songs that are out there are the blessing and songs that are going to just encourage people's hearts. And so write towards encouragement. Right now, I think be with them, be with the folks that need to hear those things and know their stories so that you can write out of that. So that's what I would say.
All right. So if anybody wants to find out more about you, about your music and your songs, if they want to listen to that song that's on the radio in the Netherlands and they don't want to have to fly to the Netherlands to do so, how are they going to find your material? How are they going to find out more about you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube. I think it's J, and you can find my website too, jmarkey.com. You can go there and you can find some of my videos that are on the front page there. And from there, I think you can just head on to YouTube and find the playlist of a lot of my songs. Most of them are self-released, but a few of them are commercially released. And I've been able to have some opportunities that the Lord has blessed me with. And so I hope that it would bless others too.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for joining me on this podcast. And thank you to everybody who has listened or has watched this. We hope that you have a blessed week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much.
This has been the Christian Arts and Entertainment Podcast with author, musician, and worship pastor Kevin Newsom. Thank you for joining us today, for your comments, and for subscribing. See you next time.